carried ash instead of snow. Mira Chen pressed her palm against the diner window, watching gray flakes drift through the streetlights of Crescent Hollow, like the ghost of a fire no one could see. Her reflection stared back, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a messy knot, the kind of exhaustion that came from running a failing business and pretending everything was fine. You gonna wipe that glass or just fog it up all night? She turned to find Earl, the night cook, grinning at her from the kitchen pass-through. The old man had worked at Hollow's End Diner longer than Mira had been alive, and he treated her late shifts like personal entertainment. "It's Ash," she said quietly. Earl's smile faltered. He moved to the window, squinting into the darkness beyond the parking lot where the pine forest began. Forest fire? No smoke, no sirens. Mira grabbed a rag anyway, wiping down the counter in smooth, practiced motions. Just ash. The bell above the door chimed. Mira looked up, her polite greeting dying on her lips. The man who entered didn't belong in Crescent Hollow. He was too tall, too still, moving through the fluorescent-lit space like a shadow given form. Dark hair fell past his collar, and his eyes gray as winter storms swept the empty diner with the precision of a predator assessing territory. He wore black, all of it, and when he moved toward the corner booth, Mira caught the faint scent of pine and something wild, something that made her pulse stutter for reasons she couldn't name. Coffee? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Those gray eyes locked on her, and for a moment, the world narrowed to that single point of contact. His jaw tightened, something flickering across his face recognition. No, that was impossible. She'd never seen him before. She would have remembered. "Black," he said, his voice low and rough, like he hadn't spoken in days. Mira poured the coffee with hands that wanted to shake, but didn't. She'd learned young how to hide fear, how to make herself small and unnoticed. Growing up in foster care taught you that. Surviving on your own taught you the rest. She set the cup on his table, careful not to let their fingers touch. "You passing through?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. His gaze cut to her, sharp enough to draw blood. "That depends. On what? On whether you're who I think you are." The air in the diner changed, thickening like the moment before a storm breaks. Mira took a step back, her server's smile fixed in place even as her instincts screamed at her to run. "I think you've got me confused with someone else. Maybe." He lifted the coffee cup, inhaling the steam, but his eyes never left her face. "Or maybe you're exactly who you're not supposed to be." Before Mira could respond, a sound pierced the night high and desperate, the cry of an animal in distress. It came from the forest, raw and broken, and it hit something deep in her chest like a physical blow. The stranger was on his feet before the sound faded, moving toward the door with lethal grace. Wait, Mira didn't know why she followed him, didn't know why her feet carried her past the counter, past Earl's startled shout, out into the parking lot where ash still fell like corrupted snow. The crying came again, closer now, and Mira's heart clenched. "It's hurt," she whispered. The stranger turned to her, and in the dim light, his face looked carved from stone. "Go inside." "No." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You don't understand what's out there." "Then tell me." For 3 long seconds, he stared at her like he was trying to solve an impossible equation. Then he turned and walked toward the tree line, and Mira, God help her, followed. The forest swallowed them whole. Mist clung to the ground, turning the world soft and strange. The crying guided them deeper, past ancient pines that blocked out the sky, until they reached a small clearing where moonlight broke through in silver shafts. A wolf pup huddled against a fallen log, no bigger than a terrier, its fur matted with blood. It whimpered when it saw them, trying to crawl backward even as its injured leg gave out. Mira moved without thinking, dropping to her knees in the damp earth. "Don't." The stranger's hand shot out, gripping her shoulder hard enough to bruise, but Mira was already reaching for the pup, her hands gentle, despite the fear coursing through her veins. The animal trembled, its golden eyes wide with pain and terror. And then, without knowing why, without understanding where the melody came from, Mira began to sing. The words weren't English, they weren't any language she'd learned in school or heard on the radio. They rose from somewhere deeper, ancient and achingly familiar, a lullaby that tasted of memory she didn't own. "Shenlin de haizi, yue liang de sui." The pup's crying stopped. Its small body relaxed, leaning into her touch as her voice wrapped around them both like a spell. Behind her, the stranger made a sound low and wounded, barely human. Mira turned, still singing, and froze. He stood as if struck by lightning, his face drained of color, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. When he looked at her now, it wasn't with suspicion or anger, it was with devastation. "Where did you learn that?" His voice cracked on the words. Mira's song died. I don't know. I don't even know what language. It's old tongue." He took a step toward her, and the movement held a tremor she hadn't seen before. The forbidden language, the one only born alphas learn from their mothers before they're old enough to shift. The pup whimpered, pressing closer to Mira's chest. That's impossible, she whispered. Yes. His gray eyes blazed silver in the moonlight, and Mira realized with cold certainty that they weren't just gray, they were wolf. It should be. That lullaby died with my mother 30 years ago. No human should know it. The forest held its breath. No human alive, he continued, his voice dropping to something dark and terrible, except the woman who helped murder her. The accusation hung between them like a blade. Mira's hands tightened protectively around the injured pup, her heart slamming against her ribs. The stranger, no, the wolf stood 3 feet away, and the space between them crackled with something primal and dangerous. I don't know what you're talking about. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I've never murdered anyone. His laugh was bitter, sharp enough to cut. Not you, not directly. He dragged a hand through his dark hair, and she caught the tremor in his fingers. But that song, it's impossible. My mother sang it to me once, the night before she died. She told me never to teach it to anyone, that it was ours alone. The pup whined softly, nuzzling against Mira's jacket. She could feel its heartbeat, rapid and frightened, matching her own. Maybe she sang it to someone else, Mira said quietly. Maybe she was murdered in our territory by a human woman with a voice like honey and lies like poison. His eyes blazed, silver bleeding through gray. A woman who sang to gain my mother's trust, who learned our sacred words, who used them to get close enough to drive wolfsbane through her heart. Mira stood slowly, cradling the pup against her chest. The movement sent pain shooting through her knees, but she kept her chin up, meeting his gaze even as fear coiled in her stomach. I'm 26 years old. 30 years ago, I didn't exist. Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe, or the first crack in his certainty. He took a step closer, and Mira forced herself not to retreat. Then how? The question came out raw. How do you know words that died with her? I don't know. The truth tasted like ash. I've never heard that language before. I didn't even know I knew it until it came out of my mouth. They stared at each other in the moonlit clearing, the forest watching, waiting. The pup's breathing had steadied, its small body warm against Mira's racing heart. What's your name? He asked finally, his voice dropping to something almost gentle. Mira Chen. Chen. He repeated it like he was testing the weight of it. Chinese? My mother was. I don't really know. She hated how small her voice sounded. I grew up in foster care. No family history, no records before I was 3 years old. Just a name and a birth date that might not even be real. The anger in his face shifted, transforming into something more complex. He moved closer, and this time Mira did step back, her spine hitting the rough bark of a pine tree. Let me see your neck, he said quietly. What? No, please. The word seemed to cost him. If you're who I think you might be, there would be a mark. Mira's free hand flew to her throat, to the small crescent-shaped scar just below her left ear. She'd had it as long as she could remember, a pale reminder of a past she couldn't access. His eyes tracked the movement, and she watched him go very still. How did you get that scar? I don't know. It was already there when my first foster family took me in. She swallowed hard. They said I came to them barely verbal, no memory of anything before. What age? 3. Maybe 4. The records were unclear. He closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, the silver had receded, leaving only stormy gray. That song. It's not just a lullaby. It's a blood hymn. Only those with alpha lineage can carry it in their bones, pass it through generations. If you sang it, then what? Mira demanded, her fear crystallizing into something sharper. What does that make me? Some kind of werewolf? Because I'm pretty sure I'd have noticed sprouting fur and fangs by now. No. He shook his head slowly. But it might make you something else. Something we thought was just legend. The pup stirred in her arms, making a small sound of distress. Mira looked down, noticing for the first time that its breathing had turned shallow, its body trembling despite the warmth of her embrace. It's getting worse, she whispered. The stranger moved closer, all hostility draining from his posture as he focused on the injured animal. The wounds infected. Wolfsbane, probably from a trap. His jaw clenched. Rogues have been setting them throughout the territory. What can we do? We? He looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. A crack in the armor, a glimpse of the man beneath the predator. You should run, go back to your diner, your human life, and forget you ever saw this. And let this pup die? Mira held his gaze. No. For a long moment, he studied her face like he was searching for something. Then he sighed, the sound carrying decades of exhaustion. My name is Kieran Cross. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. He said it without pride, just weary fact. And if I take you to Packlands to save that pup, there's a strong chance my people will kill you on sight. Why? Because 30 years ago, a human woman sang her way into our trust and helped slaughter half our bloodline. Because my pack hasn't forgotten, hasn't forgiven, and won't care that you don't remember. He paused, something painful crossing his face. Because you look exactly like her. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Mira looked down at the dying pup in her arms, then back at Kieran Cross, Alpha King. Enemy, the only chance this small life had. Then I guess, she said quietly, you'd better make sure they don't see me. His eyes widened slightly, surprise breaking through his careful control. You're serious? Completely. Kieran stared at her for 3 long heartbeats, then nodded once, sharp and decisive. Stay close. Don't speak unless I tell you to, and whatever you do. His voice dropped to a growl. Don't sing. Kieran's truck was older than Mira expected, a battered Ford that smelled of pine and leather, and something wild she couldn't name. She climbed into the passenger seat, the injured pup still cradled against her chest, and watched him move around the vehicle with fluid grace. He didn't drive toward town. Instead, he headed deeper into the mountains, where the road turned from asphalt to gravel to dirt, where civilization became a distant memory, and the forest pressed close on all sides. Mist clung to the windshield, turning the world into a watercolor painting of shadows and silver. Mira kept one hand on the pup, feeling its heartbeat stutter beneath her palm. The small wound on its leg had stopped bleeding, but the flesh around it had turned an ugly gray-green. How long does it have? She asked quietly. Kieran's hands tightened on the steering wheel. An hour, maybe less. And your pack they can help? Our healer can, if she agrees to see you. He glanced at her, his profile sharp in the dashboard's glow. If I can convince my second not to rip your throat out the moment you cross the boundary. Mira swallowed hard. Comforting. I'm not here to comfort you. But his voice had lost some of its edge. I'm here because that pup is Pack, and Pack comes first. Always. They drove in silence for several minutes, the truck climbing higher into terrain that felt increasingly remote. Through breaks in the trees, Mira caught glimpses of a valley below dark and vast, dotted with lights that could have been houses or could have been something else entirely. Tell me about the woman, she said finally. The one who looked like me. Kieran's jaw clenched so hard she heard his teeth grind. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice carefully controlled. Her name was Sarah. Or, that's what she called herself. He navigated a sharp turn with practiced ease. She came to our territory claiming to be lost, injured. My mother. He stopped, breathed. My mother had a soft heart. She took Sarah in, taught her our ways, even let her observe the sacred rituals. And then, during the Luna eclipse 30 years ago, when our defenses were down and our pack was gathered for the transformation ceremony, Sarah led a group of hunters straight to our heart. His knuckles went white on the wheel. They used silver and wolfsbane, killed 17 wolves, including my mother, before we could drive them back. Mira felt the words like physical blows. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for things you didn't do. He shot her a sharp look. Unless you did do them. I was a child. You don't remember being a child. The truth of it settled between them, cold and uncomfortable. Mira looked down at the pup, at its labored breathing, and felt something twist in her chest. What happened to Sarah? She escaped. We tracked her scent to the forest's edge, but she vanished like smoke. Kieran's voice went dark. Some say she died in the wilderness. Others believe she's still out there, protected by whatever organization sent her. He paused. My second thinks she had a child, someone to carry on her legacy. And you think that's me? I think... He stopped the truck suddenly, the engine idling in the misty darkness. When he turned to face her, his eyes held that silver glow again. I think you sang a song that should be impossible. I think you carry a scar that looks like a claiming mark from an alpha's jaw. And I think every instinct I have is screaming that you're either the answer to questions I've been asking for 30 years, or the most dangerous thing to ever cross into my territory. Mira held his gaze, refusing to look away even as her heart hammered. Which do you believe? I don't know yet. He reached across the space between them, his hand moving toward her throat. Mira froze, every muscle tensing, but his touch when it came was surprisingly gentle, fingers tracing the crescent scar below her ear with careful precision. But this mark, it's deliberate. Someone bit you, branded you, when you were very young. His skin was warm against hers, and Mira felt her breath catch at the contact. This close, she could see flecks of gold in his silver-gray eyes, could smell pine and winter and something essentially him. Why would someone do that? She whispered. To mark you as Pack, or, his fingers stilled. to mark you as protected, a blood claim that would transcend death itself. The pup whimpered, breaking the moment. Kieran pulled back, his expression shuddering, and put the truck back in gear. They crested a final ridge, and Mira's breath caught. The valley below was alive with lights not electric, but something older, warmer. Structures dotted the landscape, a mix of modern cabins and ancient stone buildings that seemed to grow from the earth itself. And everywhere, she felt eyes watching. "Welcome to Shadowpine," Kieran said quietly. "The heart of Northern Territory." As they descended, Mira noticed figures emerging from the buildings tall, impossibly graceful, their movements too fluid to be entirely human. They gathered along the dirt road, watching the truck pass with expressions ranging from curiosity to outright hostility. "They can smell you," Kieran said. "Human scent is distinct, foreign, and dangerous? To them? Yes, always." He pulled up to a large cabin built from dark timber and stone. "Stay in the truck. Don't make eye contact. Don't speak. And for God's sake, don't." The pup in Mira's arms suddenly convulsed, its small body going rigid. Its breathing stopped. "No." Mira's hands moved instinctively, one pressing against its chest, the other cradling its head. And before Kieran could stop her, before she could think about what she was doing, she began to sing. The old tongue flowed from her lips like water from a spring, the blood hymn rising into the night. Every wolf in the valley froze. The silence that followed Mira's song was absolute. She felt it like a physical weight. Dozens of predators froze in mid-motion, their attention locked on the truck with lethal focus. The pup in her arms gasped, its chest rising with a shuddering breath. And Mira realized her hands were glowing with a faint, golden light. "What?" She stared at her palms, watching the luminescence fade like dying embers. Kieran's voice came low and tight. "Get out. Slowly. Keep the pup visible. You said not to." That was before you announced yourself to every wolf in a 5-mile radius. He was already moving, sliding from the driver's seat with controlled grace. "Now they need to see you're not a threat. Or we're both dead." Mira's door opened before she could reach for the handle. A woman stood there, late 50s, silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe braid, eyes the color of amber, and just as hard. She wore practical clothes, jeans and a flannel shirt, but moved with the same inhuman grace as Kieran. "Explain," the woman said, her gaze flicking between Mira and the Alpha King. "Explain why you've brought her here." "The pup was dying, Sasha." Kieran moved around the truck, positioning himself between Mira and the gathering crowd. "Wolfsbane poisoning. It needed immediate care." "So you brought a human who sings the blood hymn?" Sasha's voice could have cut glass. "A human who looks exactly like the woman who murdered your mother?" Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. Mira caught fragments impossible. "Betrayal. Kill her now." She held the pup closer, feeling its heartbeat strengthen against her chest. "I brought someone who might have answers," Kieran said quietly. "Someone who might be connected to what happened 30 years ago." "Connected?" A man pushed through the crowd younger than Kieran, with sandy hair and eyes that burned gold with barely contained rage. "She's not connected. She's complicit. Look at her, Kieran. Look at her." "I see her, Marcus." "Then you see Sarah's face. Sarah's eyes. Sarah's lying mouth." "Enough." Kieran's voice cracked like a whip, and the air pressure changed, dropping so suddenly Mira's ears popped. When he spoke again, it resonated with power that made her bones vibrate. "I am Alpha. My word is law. And I have granted this human safe passage." Marcus bared his teeth, actually bared them. Canines too long and sharp to be human. "For how long?" "Until I say otherwise." The two men stared at each other, and Mira understood she was watching something ancient and dangerous, a challenge that could turn bloody in seconds. Then Marcus looked away first, his jaw clenched so tight she thought it might shatter. "Your funeral," he muttered, and melted back into the crowd. Sasha hadn't moved. She studied Mira with clinical precision, her gaze lingering on the pup, then rising to Mira's face, her throat, her hands. "The pup," she said finally. "Give it to me." Mira's arms tightened reflexively. "I can help. You've done enough." But Sasha's tone had shifted, lost some of its sharp edge. She stepped closer, and Mira caught her scent herbs and earth and something medicinal. "The glow. When you sang. Have you done that before?" "I don't know what that was." "Truth or lie?" Sasha asked, though it didn't sound like she was talking to Mira. "Truth," Kieran said quietly. "I'd smell deception." Sasha made a sound low in her throat, not quite approval, not quite acceptance. She held out her hands, and after a moment's hesitation, Mira transferred the pup. The small creature whined, reaching back toward Mira with one paw, and something in her chest constricted painfully. "I'll save it if I can," Sasha said, meeting Mira's eyes. "But you don't belong here, whether you remember Sarah or not." Whether you carry her blood or her sins, this place will destroy you. Noted, Mira said quietly. Sasha almost smiled. Then she turned and walked toward the cabin. The pup cradled expertly against her shoulder, and the crowd parted for her like water. Kieran touched Mira's elbow, gentle but firm. Inside. Now. He led her through the dispersing wolves, their eyes tracking every movement. Mira kept her chin up, her spine straight, even as fear threaded through her veins like ice water. The cabin Kieran guided her to was smaller than Sasha's, a single-room structure with rough-hewn walls and a stone fireplace that dominated one wall. The door closed behind them, and Mira finally let herself breathe. That went well, she said, aiming for humor and landing somewhere near hysteria. Kieran moved to the fireplace, building a fire with practiced efficiency. You're alive. That's better than I expected. Your second wants to kill me. Marcus wants to kill everyone who isn't Pack. Flames caught, orange light spilling across the wooden floor. He was there the night of the massacre. Watched his parents die. He's never forgotten, never forgiven. And you? Mira asked quietly. Have you forgiven? Kieran turned to face her, his expression unreadable in the firelight. I don't forgive. I protect. There's a difference. But you brought me here anyway. Because that pup recognized you. He took a step closer, and Mira forced herself not to retreat. Wolves don't trust easily. They certainly don't trust humans. But when you sang, when you held it, it knew you. On some level, deeper than scent or sight, it knew you. What does that mean? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. But I intend to find out. He reached up, and Mira went very still, as his fingers found the scar on her neck again. This time his touch lingered, tracing the crescent shape with something like reverence. My mother, he said quietly, had a gift. She could recognize souls, see the truth of what someone was beneath the flesh. His thumb brushed her pulse point, and Mira's breath hitched. If she marked you, if she gave you the blood hymn somehow, there was a reason. Or, Mira whispered, Sarah stole it and passed it to me. Maybe. But his eyes said he didn't believe it. The door burst open, and Sasha stood framed in firelight, her expression grave. The pup will live, she said. But there's something you both need to see. Sasha's cabin was larger inside than Mira expected, the main room dominated by shelves crammed with jars of dried herbs, crystals, and objects she couldn't name. The air smelled of sage and something sharper, medicinal, and ancient at once. The pup lay on a padded table near the fireplace, its breathing steady now, the wound on its leg cleaned and bandaged with what looked like moss and silvery thread. When Mira approached, its tail gave a weak thump. It keeps asking for you, Sasha said, watching Mira with those unsettling amber eyes. In its way. Asking? Wolves communicate differently than humans. Emotion, intention, it's all scent and energy. Sasha gestured toward the pup. This one wants its pack, and right now, it thinks you're Pack. Mira reached out slowly, letting the pup sniff her fingers before scratching behind its ears. The small creature leaned into her touch, making a sound of contentment that twisted something in her chest. That's not what we came to see, Kieran said from the doorway, his voice carefully neutral. No. Sasha moved to a cluttered desk, pulling out what looked like an old leather journal. While treating the pup, I noticed something, a scent marker I haven't encountered in 3 decades. She opened the journal, revealing pages filled with pressed flowers, sketches, and handwritten notes in flowing script. Your mother's journal, Kieran. The one she kept of every significant Pack event. Kieran went very still. Why do you have that? She gave it to me the week before she died. Said if anything happened to her, I should keep it safe. Sasha's voice softened. Said there were secrets in here that might matter someday. She turned pages until she found what she was looking for, a sketch of a crescent moon symbol, intricate and beautiful, with notes written in a language Mira didn't recognize, except she did. The words swam in her vision, rearranging themselves into meaning. The child of 2 worlds, born of blood and moonlight, marked for protection, hidden in plain sight. I can read it, Mira whispered. Both Kieran and Sasha turned to stare at her. That's impossible, Kieran said flatly. That's old tongue. The written form takes years to master. The child of 2 worlds, Mira read aloud, her finger tracing the elegant script. Born of blood and moonlight, marked for protection, hidden in plain sight. She looked up, seeing her own confusion reflected in their faces. What does that mean? Sasha's hands had started trembling. She set the journal down carefully, like it might shatter. There was a prophecy, older than our Pack, older than the Northern Territory itself. She moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames. It spoke of a child born during a lunar eclipse, half wolf, half human, carrying the gifts of both worlds and belonging to neither. Halflings don't exist, Kieran said, but his voice lacked conviction. The genetics don't work. A wolf and human can't produce viable offspring, can't they? Sasha turned back, her gaze sharp. Or have we simply never seen one survive? She looked at Mira. Your scar? May I examine it more closely? Mira's hand flew to her throat instinctively, but she nodded. Sasha approached, her movements slow and deliberate, giving Mira time to bolt if she wanted. Up close, the healer's eyes held less hostility and more scientific curiosity. Gentle fingers tilted Mira's chin, exposing the crescent mark. Sasha studied it for a long moment, then inhaled deeply, her expression shifting to something like shock. This isn't a claiming mark, she said quietly. It's a concealment seal. A what? Kieran crossed the room in 3 strides, his presence suddenly overwhelming. A concealment seal. Ancient magic, the kind our ancestors used to hide cubs from enemies during territory wars. Sasha's finger traced the scar, and Mira felt a strange tingling sensation, like electricity dancing across her skin. Someone very powerful marked this girl to suppress her wolf nature, to make her appear completely human. The room spun. Mira grabbed the table edge for support, the pup whining in concern. That's insane, she managed. I'm human. I've never shifted, never had any abilities. Until tonight, Kieran said softly. When you made your hands glow with healing light, when you sang a blood hymn that should be genetically impossible for you to know, when you calmed a dying wolf pup with nothing but your voice and touch. Mira looked at her hands, remembering the golden glow, the way the pup's heartbeat had steadied beneath her palms. If what you're saying is true, if I'm somehow part wolf, then why? Why hide it? Why suppress it? Protection, Sasha said. If you were born during the Luna eclipse 30 years ago, the same eclipse when Sarah attacked, Kieran finished, his voice gone cold and hard. The implications hung in the air like smoke. You think I'm Sarah's daughter, Mira said. It wasn't a question. I think, Sasha said carefully, that you're someone's daughter, someone important enough to mark with ancient magic, someone worth hiding from both worlds. She paused. The question is, were you hidden from us, or from them? A knock at the door made them all tense. Marcus entered without waiting for permission, his expression tight. We have a problem, he said, looking at Kieran. Scouts just reported movement on the eastern boundary. Rogue pack, maybe 20 strong, heading straight for Shadowpine. His golden eyes flicked to Mira, cold and assessing. And they're asking about the human girl who sings the old songs. Kieran's hand went to Mira's arm, his grip protective. How do they know about her? Someone told them. Marcus's smile was all teeth. Someone who wants her badly enough to start a war over it. The pup on the table began to whine, a high, distressed sound that made Mira's chest ache. She moved instinctively, gathering the small creature against her, and felt it calm immediately. They can't have her, Kieran said, his voice dropping to something that wasn't quite human. She's under my protection, even if it means fighting your own kind, Marcus challenged. Even if she's everything we've feared for 3 decades? Kieran looked at Mira, and in his eyes she saw conflict, suspicion, and something else, something that made her pulse quicken. Especially then, he said. The war room was carved into the mountain itself. Ancient stone walls covered with maps, territorial markers, and what Mira realized with growing unease were battle strategies spanning centuries. She stood near the back, the pup still cradled in her arms, and watched as Kieran's inner circle gathered. Marcus stood at his right, radiating hostility. Sasha positioned herself near the maps, her healer's hand steady despite the tension crackling through the room. Others filtered in hard-faced wolves with eyes that tracked Mira's every breath. Talk, Kieran commanded, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. A young woman with close-cropped dark hair stepped forward. I was running perimeter when I caught their scent. 20, maybe 25 rogues, moving in coordinated formation. She paused. They're not trying to hide, Alpha. They want us to know they're coming. Who leads them? Sasha asked. Garrett Thorne. The name sent a visible ripple through the room. Kieran's jaw clenched, and Mira saw his hands curl into fists. Thorne, Marcus spat. That bastard's been a thorn in our side for years. What does he want now? The girl. The scout's eyes flicked to Mira. He sent a messenger ahead. Said he has information about the human who carries the blood hymn. Said she belongs to him by right of blood debt. Mira's arms tightened around the pup. I don't know any Garrett Thorne. You wouldn't, Sasha said quietly. He was exiled from Northern Territory 15 years ago for killing a packmate during a dominance challenge. Went rogue, built his own pack from outcasts and criminals. She looked at Kieran. If he's claiming blood debt, he believes she's connected to his bloodline. Or he's lying, Marcus said. Rogues lie. It's what they do. Kieran moved to the largest map, studying the territory markers with tactical precision. How long until they reach the boundary? An hour. Maybe less if they push hard. We could meet them at the river crossing, Marcus suggested. Defensive position. High ground. Force them to. No. Kieran's voice was flat. We don't know what he really wants. If we engage without information, we risk casualties we can't afford. He turned, his gaze finding Mira across the room. He asked for a meeting. We'll give him one. You can't be serious, Marcus said. It's obviously a trap. Everything's a trap until it isn't. Kieran's expression was unreadable. Sasha, prepare defensive wards around Shadowpine. Scout patrols double, armed with Wolfsbane antidote. Marcus, I know. Gather the fighters. Marcus shot Mira a venomous look. We should never have brought her here. He left, taking half the room with him. The remaining wolves dispersed to their tasks, leaving Mira alone with Kieran and Sasha. The pup had fallen asleep against Mira's chest, its small body warm and trusting. You're not actually going to meet with him, Mira said quietly. Kieran studied her, his silver-gray eyes unreadable. I'm going to find out what he knows. About you. About 30 years ago. About why someone powerful enough to use concealment magic would hide you in plain sight. And if it's a trap, then I'll spring it on my terms. He moved closer, and Mira caught his scent pine and winter, and something uniquely him that made her pulse quicken despite the danger. You stay here, with Sasha. Don't leave this compound. Don't speak to anyone outside the inner circle. I'm not a prisoner. No, he agreed. You're either the key to our past or the weapon someone's been preparing for 30 years. Either way, you're too valuable to lose. The words should have felt clinical, strategic. Instead, they landed differently, and Mira saw something flicker in Kieran's eyes, concern. Maybe, or the beginning of something more complicated. The pup needs rest, Sasha interrupted, her timing too perfect to be accidental. I'll prepare a space for it. And for her. She looked at Mira. You'll need your strength for what's coming. Kieran nodded, already moving toward the door. I'll return before dawn. Don't do anything stupid, Mira finished. I know. He almost smiled. Then he was gone. The room feeling suddenly larger and colder in his absence. Sasha led Mira through stone corridors to a small chamber carved into the mountain's heart. A bed, a washstand, a single window that overlooked the valley below. Simple, functional, and surprisingly comfortable. You can set the pup here, Sasha said, indicating a cushioned basket near the fireplace. It will sleep until morning. Mira lowered the small creature carefully, watching it curl into a tight ball. Without its weight against her chest, she felt oddly vulnerable. Why are you helping me? She asked Sasha. Everyone else seems ready to kill me on sight. The healer moved to the window, her profile sharp in the moonlight. Because I knew Kieran's mother. She was my closest friend, the one who taught me healing magic, who trusted me with her secrets. She paused. 3 days before she died, she came to me. Told me she'd had a vision, a child born in blood and moonlight, marked by both worlds, hunted by both sides. She said when that child appeared, everything we knew would change. You think she was talking about me? I think, Sasha said carefully, that you appeared singing her blood hymn on the anniversary of her death. I think you carry a concealment seal that requires power most modern wolves couldn't access. And I think Garrett Thorne showing up 12 hours after you arrive is not coincidence. Mira sank onto the bed, exhaustion finally catching up with her. I don't remember anything before I was 3. No family, no past, just emptiness where my childhood should be. Memory suppression often accompanies concealment seals, Sasha said. Whoever marked you wanted to ensure you couldn't reveal secrets, even under torture. That's a comforting thought. Sasha's expression softened fractionally. Get some rest. Whatever happens tonight, you'll need your strength tomorrow. She moved toward the door, then paused. Mira, when Kieran looks at you, he sees his mother's killer, but he's also seeing something else. Something that terrifies him more than revenge ever could. What? Possibility, Sasha said quietly, and closed the door behind her. Mira lay back on the bed, staring at the stone ceiling, the pup's gentle breathing the only sound. Outside, she heard movement wolves preparing for battle, for confrontation, for whatever Garrett Thorne was bringing to their doorstep. And somewhere in the darkness, Kieran was walking into danger because of her. Mira lasted exactly 43 minutes before she couldn't stand it anymore. The stone chamber felt like a cage, the walls pressing closer with every passing second. She'd tried to rest, tried to follow Sasha's advice, but her mind kept circling back to Kieran walking into a trap, to rogues who somehow knew about her, to blood debts and concealment seals and a past she couldn't remember. The pup slept soundly in its basket, oblivious to her restlessness. Moving quietly, Mira slipped into the corridor. The compound was quieter now. Most of the pack gathered elsewhere preparing defenses. She assumed, or positioning themselves for whatever came next. She followed the stone passages by instinct, drawn toward fresh air and open sky. She emerged onto a narrow balcony carved into the mountainside. Below, the valley spread out in darkness, punctuated by scattered lights. And beyond, barely visible in the moonlight, she could see the river, a silver ribbon cutting through the forest. Movement caught her eye. Figures gathering on the near bank, their silhouettes too fluid to be human. Kieran's pack, taking position. And on the far side, emerging from the tree line like ghosts, the rogues. You were told to stay inside. Mira spun to find Marcus leaning against the stone archway, his arms crossed, his expression somewhere between anger and resignation. I don't take orders well, she said. Clearly. He moved to stand beside her, his gaze tracking the scene below. He's risking everything for you. You know that, right? I didn't ask him to. Doesn't matter. The moment he granted you safe passage, he bound his honor to yours. If this goes wrong, if Thorne's people attack, Marcus's jaw clenched. Pack law demands he defend you, even if it costs him his life. Guilt twisted in Mira's stomach. Then maybe I should leave. Too late for that. Marcus's voice was bitter. Your scent is all over Shadowpine now. You've touched Pack, healed Pack, sang to Pack. Whether you meant to or not, you've made yourself part of this. Below, the two groups faced each other across the water. Even from this distance, Mira could feel the tension, two predator packs on the edge of violence. A figure stepped forward from the rogue side. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never lost a fight. His voice carried on the wind, though Mira couldn't make out words. Kieran stood alone on his side of the river, refusing to show weakness by bringing guards. The sight made Mira's chest tighten with an emotion she didn't want to examine too closely. What does Thorne want? She asked quietly. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then, 15 years ago, when he was exiled, he swore he'd return for what was stolen from him. Most of us thought he meant territory, or revenge. He paused. But if he's claiming blood debt over you, it means he believes you're connected to his bloodline, that someone in his family had a right to you that was denied. That's insane. Is it? Marcus looked at her directly for the first time, his golden eyes calculating. You appear out of nowhere with no memory, marked with ancient magic, carrying songs that died 30 years ago. If you're who Sasha thinks you are, if you're the child from the prophecy, then your bloodline matters. A lot. I'm nobody, Mira insisted. Just a foster kid who worked her way through community college and ended up serving coffee in the middle of nowhere. Nobody doesn't glow with healing light. Nobody doesn't read Old Tongue like it's their native language. Marcus's voice was flat. You're something, Mira Chen. The question is whether you're a miracle or a weapon. Below, the conversation at the river was intensifying. Mira watched Kieran's posture shift, tension radiating through his frame even at this distance. Then Thorne pointed directly at the compound at them. He knows you're watching, Marcus said quietly. He can probably smell you from there. Mira's hand went to the scar on her throat instinctively. What's he saying? I can't hear from here, but I can guess. He's demanding you be turned over, claiming you're his by some ancient right. Marcus's smile was sharp and humorless. And Kieran's telling him to go to hell. The rogues on the far bank began to shift, their forms rippling in ways that made Mira's eyes hurt. Not quite wolf, not quite human, something between. They're going to fight, she whispered. Maybe. Or maybe Kieran will find another way. Marcus glanced at her. He's good at that. Finding impossible solutions to impossible problems. It's what makes him alpha. Below, Kieran said something that made Thorne laugh, a sound that carried across the water like breaking glass. Then the rogue leader pulled something from his jacket, holding it up in the moonlight. Even from this distance, Mira recognized it. A photograph. Her breath caught. What is that? Marcus demanded. I don't know, but... Mira squinted, trying to make out details. The photo showed a woman, dark-haired and young, holding a small child. The image was old, faded, but something about it made Mira's chest constrict painfully. Kieran had gone completely still, his focus locked on the photograph. Thorne called out again, his voice carrying clearly now. Ask her about the lullaby, Alpha King. Ask her where she really learned it. Ask her who sang it to her in the dark. Mira's vision swam. For a moment, just a heartbeat, she smelled something familiar. Lavender and smoke. Heard a voice singing in Old Tongue. Soft and loving and achingly familiar. Xianlin de Haizi, she gasped, grabbing the balcony railing as memory fragments crashed through her mind like shattered glass. A woman's face, blurred and indistinct. Arms holding her close. The sensation of running, of fear, of being hidden away. Mira? Marcus's hand was on her shoulder, steadying her. What's wrong? I remember, she whispered. Not everything, but someone sang to me. When I was small, someone who loved me. She looked at Marcus, tears blurring her vision. Someone who was terrified. Below, Kieran turned and looked up at the compound. Even across the distance, Mira felt the weight of his gaze, the question in it. Thorn was still talking, his voice taking on a mocking edge. The child was promised to my bloodline before she was born. A pact sealed in blood and magic. You can't hide her forever, Kieran Cross. She belongs to us. She belongs to no one. Kieran's voice rang out, clear and absolute. By law of sanctuary and right of protection. She is Pack. Touch her, and you touch all of Northern Territory. The rogues snarled as one, a sound that made Mira's bones vibrate. Thorn smiled, slow and cruel. Then war it is. The rogues didn't attack immediately. They melted back into the forest like smoke, leaving only Thorn standing at the water's edge. He held Mira's gaze across the distance. She could feel it, predatory and possessive, then disappeared into the darkness. They'll come at dawn, Marcus said, already moving. It's what I would do, catch us tired, unprepared. He grabbed Mira's arm, not quite gentle. You need to get back inside. Now. But Mira was watching Kieran cross the river, his movements controlled, despite the tension radiating from every line of his body. He climbed the path to the compound with lethal grace, and when he emerged onto the balcony, his eyes were blazing silver. I told you to stay in your room, he said, his voice dangerously soft. Since when do I listen? Mira met his gaze, refusing to flinch. What did he show you? Kieran's jaw clenched. He pulled a folded photograph from his pocket, the edges worn soft with age, and held it out. Mira took it with trembling fingers. The woman in the photo was young, maybe 20, with long dark hair and eyes that held both fierce love and deep sorrow. She wore simple clothes, a flannel shirt and jeans, and in her arms she cradled an infant wrapped in a blue blanket. Behind them, barely visible, stood the edge of a forest. The woman's face was hauntingly familiar. That's Sarah, Kieran said quietly. The woman who betrayed us. The woman who led hunters to our territory. He paused. The woman who looked exactly like you. Mira stared at the photo, her heart hammering. The baby is approximately 3 months old in this picture, according to Thorn. The photo was taken 26 years and 9 months ago. Kieran's voice was carefully neutral. 3 months before the Luna Eclipse massacre. The math aligned too perfectly. Mira felt the world tilt, reality reorganizing itself into something she didn't recognize. He's claiming I'm Sarah's daughter, she whispered. He's claiming more than that. Kieran took the photo back, his fingers brushing hers, the contact brief but electric. He says Sarah was promised to his father as a mate. That the child that you were meant to join his bloodline. That my mother interfered, broke the pact. And that's why Sarah attacked. Marcus made a sound of disgust. That's rogue propaganda. Your mother would never, wouldn't she? Kieran's voice was raw. If she believed a child was in danger? If she thought she was saving an innocent life? He looked at Mira, and the conflict in his eyes made her chest ache. My mother had visions. She saw futures that hadn't happened yet. What if she saw Sarah's fate and tried to change it? By hiding the baby, Sasha said, appearing in the archway like she'd been summoned. By marking her with concealment magic and placing her somewhere the rogues would never think to look. Among humans, Mira said. In the foster system, anonymous and protected. Until you turn 26, Sasha continued, moving to examine the photograph. Until the concealment seal began to weaken naturally, as all such magic does. She looked at Mira with something like pity. The glow when you healed the pup that was your wolf nature breaking through. The ability to read old tongue, to sing the blood hymn, all of it surfacing because the magic can't hold anymore. Mira's legs felt weak. She sank onto the stone bench, her mind racing. If Sarah was my mother, and she was promised to Thorn's father who was my father, the question hung in the air, heavy with implications. Kieran and Sasha exchanged a look that made Mira's stomach drop. What? She demanded. What aren't you telling me? The photograph, Sasha said quietly. May I see it again? Kieran handed it over. The healer studied it closely, then turned it over. On the back, written in faded ink, were words in Old Tongue. Sasha read them aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Born of 2 alphas, child of prophecy, protected by the Moon Mother herself. 2 alphas, Marcus repeated. That's impossible. A female can't carry a child fathered by 2 different males. Not 2 different males, Sasha interrupted. 2 alpha bloodlines. 1 wolf, 1... She stopped, her face going pale. 1 what? Mira asked, though part of her already knew. 1 witch, Kieran finished, his voice hollow. Sarah wasn't just human. She was a blood witch, one of the few who could channel wolf magic without being bitten. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity. A witch powerful enough to learn Old Tongue. A witch promised to a rogue alpha but drawn to something someone else. A witch who could create a child with properties that shouldn't exist. My father, Mira said. He was Wolf, an alpha. Yes, Sasha confirmed. And if my mother was promised to Thorn's father, but had a child with another alpha, then your very existence broke a sacred pact, Kieran said. Blood debt doesn't just mean Thorn has a claim on you. It means he has the right to kill you for the dishonor your parents caused his bloodline. Silence fell like a shroud. Unless, Marcus said slowly, someone with greater authority claims her first. Someone whose bloodline supersedes the rogue pack's rights. He was looking at Kieran. Mira felt her breath catch as understanding dawned. No, absolutely not. It's the only way, Sasha said, though her voice was gentle. If Kieran claims you as Pack truly claims you, with the full binding ritual, Thorn's blood debt becomes void. Pack law supersedes all other contracts. What does that mean? Mira asked, though she suspected she knew. Kieran moved closer, and Mira saw the war being waged behind his silver eyes. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. It means I would mark you. Bind you to Northern Territory with magic that can't be broken. He paused. It means you would become mine in every way that matters to Wolf Law. My responsibility, my protection, He didn't finish, but the unspoken word hung between them. Mate. And if I refuse? Mira whispered. Then at dawn, Kieran said quietly, Garrett Thorn will come for you. And I won't be able to stop him without starting a war that will kill everyone in this valley. The pup's cry echoed from the chamber, lonely, frightened, calling for her. Mira looked at Kieran, at the man who should hate her, who had every reason to let Thorn take her, who was instead offering to bind himself to her forever. How long do I have to decide? Until dawn, he said. 3 hours. Mira returned to her chamber alone, though she felt Kieran's presence like a shadow in the hallway, protective, watchful, giving her space she desperately needed. The pup was awake, whimpering softly in its basket. When Mira entered, it scrambled toward her with clumsy determination, its bandaged leg barely slowing it down. She scooped it up, and the small creature burrowed against her neck, its heartbeat rapid and trusting. What do I do? She whispered into its fur. The pup had no answers, only unconditional acceptance. It didn't care about blood debts or prophecies or impossible choices. It just knew she was safe, warm, home. Mira moved to the window, cradling the pup, and watched the valley prepare for war. Torches appeared along the perimeter, wolves taking positions in the darkness. She could hear them low voices, the sound of weapons being checked, the tension that came before violence. All because of her. A knock at the door, soft and respectful. Come in, Mira called, expecting Sasha. Kieran entered instead, carrying a tray with tea and bread. He moved with careful neutrality, setting it on the small table before turning to face her. You should eat, he said. Whatever you decide. You'll need your strength. I'm not hungry. Eat anyway. It wasn't quite a command, more like concern wrapped in authority. Please. Mira set the pup down gently and picked up the tea, more to have something to do with her hands than from any real desire. The warmth felt good against her palms. Tell me about the ritual, she said quietly. What it actually means. Kieran moved to the opposite side of the room, maintaining distance like he was afraid of crowding her. It's called the Soul Mark, ancient magic that binds two wolves together, or in rare cases, a wolf and a being with compatible magic. He paused. It creates a permanent connection. Emotional, spiritual, sometimes physical. You would feel what I feel. Know when I'm in danger. Carry part of my strength, and I would carry part of yours. That sounds invasive. It is. His honesty was stark. It's meant for mates who choose each other freely, who want that level of intimacy. Using it as a legal protection is... He stopped, searching for words. It's not ideal, but it would save my life. Yes. Mira took a sip of tea, buying time to organize her thoughts. And you? What do you get out of this besides being permanently bound to the daughter of your mother's murderer? Kieran flinched like she'd struck him. Don't. Don't what? Don't state the obvious? Mira set the cup down harder than necessary. Sarah betrayed your pack, led hunters to slaughter your family, and I'm her daughter. That doesn't just go away because you perform some ritual. No, Kieran agreed, his voice rough. It doesn't. He moved closer, and Mira saw the conflict warring in his face, grief and duty and something raw. But you're not her. You didn't choose your parentage any more than I chose mine. You still see her when you look at me. Sometimes, the admission cost him. But I also see someone who sang to save a dying pup. Someone who demanded to help even when it meant walking into danger. Someone who... He stopped, jaw clenching. Someone who what? Kieran closed the distance between them, and Mira's breath caught at the intensity in his silver eyes. Someone who makes me question everything I thought I knew about honor and revenge, and what my mother would have wanted. The air between them felt charged, electric. Mira could smell him pine and winter and something uniquely wolf that made her pulse quicken. Your mother marked me, she said quietly. Sasha thinks she hid me, protected me, gave me the blood hymn somehow. Why would she do that if I was the enemy's child? I don't know. Kieran's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. But she was never wrong about people. If she protected you, there was a reason. Or maybe she made a mistake. My mother didn't make mistakes. He reached up slowly, telegraphing the movement, and touched the scar on Mira's throat with gentle fingers. This mark, it's her signature. I'd recognize it anywhere. She gave you something precious, something that should have died with her. Mira's hand covered his, holding it against her neck. His skin was warm, and she felt his pulse jump at the contact. I'm scared, she admitted. Of the rogues, of Thorn, of what I might be. But I'm also scared of this, of binding myself to you when I don't know if I can trust what I'm feeling. What are you feeling? The question was soft, vulnerable in a way she hadn't heard from him before. Mira looked up, meeting his gaze directly. Like I've known you longer than 2 days. Like when you're near, I can breathe easier. Like, she swallowed hard. Like fate is real, and I've been running toward you my whole life without knowing it. Kieran's thumb brushed along her jaw, and Mira shivered at the touch. The mate bond, he said quietly. It's not just legal protection. I think... He stopped, breathed. I think my wolf recognized you the moment you sang. Not as Sarah's daughter, as mine. That's impossible. So is everything else about you. His other hand came up, cradling her face between his palms. I should hate you. Every logical part of me says I should let Thorn take you, that it would be justice for what your mother did. But when I think about you in danger, about someone hurting you, about losing you, his voice cracked. It makes me want to burn the world down. Mira leaned into his touch, her heart hammering. Is that the bond talking or you? I don't know anymore. Kieran's forehead dropped to rest against hers, and Mira felt his breath against her lips. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe they've always been the same thing. The pup made a soft sound from its basket, and they both smiled despite the tension. If we do this, Mira whispered. If I let you mark me what happens after, when the danger passes and we're stuck with each other, then we figure it out. Kieran pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. Together, as pack, as whatever this becomes. That's not very reassuring. I'm not very good at reassuring. But his smile was genuine, if brief. I'm better at protecting. At fighting for what's mine. I'm not yours yet. No, he agreed. But you could be, if you trust me. Mira looked at him, really looked. At the scars on his hands from battles fought. At the weight of leadership in his eyes. At the vulnerability he was showing her despite every instinct that probably screamed against it. She thought of the pup, trusting her completely. Of Sasha, who believed in prophecies. Of a mother she couldn't remember who'd loved her enough to hide her from the world. Okay, she said quietly. Kieran went very still. Okay? Mark me. Bind me. Do whatever you need to do to keep Thorn away. Mira's voice strengthened. But not just because I'm scared. Because I think you might be right. About fate. About us. The relief in his face was devastating. He pulled her close, wrapping her in his arms, and Mira felt something click into place like a puzzle piece finding its home. Dawn is coming, he murmured against her hair. We should prepare. How long does the ritual take? Minutes for the marking, a lifetime for everything else. He pressed a kiss to her temple, gentle and reverent. Are you ready? Mira thought of all the questions still unanswered, all the dangers still approaching, all the ways this could go wrong. No, she said honestly. But let's do it anyway. The ritual chamber was older than the compound itself, a circular space carved deep into the mountain's heart, its walls covered with symbols that glowed faintly silver in the torchlight. Mira recognized some of them now. The old tongue characters arranging themselves into meaning, protection, union, forever. Sasha waited at the center, dressed in ceremonial robes of deep crimson. Marcus stood guard at the entrance, his expression unreadable. The pup Mira had started thinking of it as hers, was safely hidden with a trusted pack member. The rogues are gathering at the boundary, Marcus reported, his voice tight. Thorn's given us until first light. That's 20 minutes. Kieran nodded, already removing his shirt. Mira tried not to stare at the scars crossing his chest and back, evidence of a lifetime of battles, of protecting his pack at any cost. Mira, Sasha said gently, you'll need to bare your shoulder and throat. The mark must be visible to be legally binding. Mira's hands trembled as she pulled her sweater off, leaving only a thin tank top. The chamber's air was cool against her skin, raising goosebumps. Kieran moved closer, and she felt his heat like a physical presence. How does this work? She asked, hating how small her voice sounded. I'll shift partially, Kieran explained, his voice carefully controlled. Enough for my wolf to surface, for the mark to take. It will hurt, I won't lie about that, but the pain is brief. And then? Then your pack. Mine. Protected by every law we hold sacred. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. No one can touch you without declaring war on Northern territory. Sasha began to chant in Old Tongue, the words resonating through the stone chamber. The symbols on the walls pulsed brighter, responding to her voice. Mira felt something shift in the air magic. Ancient and powerful, gathering like a storm. Mira Chen, Sasha said formally. Do you accept this bond of your own free will? Do you offer yourself to Kieran Cross, Alpha of Northern Territory, as pack and mate? Mate. The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. Mira looked at Kieran, at the silver bleeding through his eyes, at the tension in his frame as he fought to keep control. She thought of everything that had led here, the mysterious lullaby, the dying pup, the photograph of a mother she couldn't remember. I do, she said clearly. Kieran Cross, Sasha continued. Do you accept this bond? Do you claim Mira Chen as yours to protect, to honor, to bind to your very soul? Kieran's gaze never left Mira's face. I do. The magic surged, and Mira gasped as it wrapped around them, both invisible threads pulling tight, connecting her to Kieran in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. Then let the marking begin, Sasha said. Kieran's body began to change. Not a full shift, but something between his eyes going pure silver, his canines lengthening, claws extending from his fingertips. Power radiated from him, primal and overwhelming, and every instinct Mira had screamed at her to run, but she stood her ground. It's still me, Kieran said, his voice rougher, carrying an undertone of growl. I won't hurt you more than necessary. I trust you, Mira whispered, and realized she meant it. He moved behind her, one hand gentle on her shoulder, tilting her head to expose the junction where neck met collarbone. Mira felt his breath against her skin, felt the sharp points of his canines as he positioned himself carefully. Breathe, he murmured. Just breathe. Then he bit down. Pain exploded through Mira's shoulder, white-hot and absolute. She cried out, her knees buckling, but Kieran's arm wrapped around her waist, holding her upright. The pain intensified, then suddenly transformed into something else, warmth spreading from the bite, flowing through her veins like liquid sunlight. She felt Kieran's presence flood her mind, his strength, his determination, his fierce protectiveness. But beneath that, she felt something gentler, his fear of failing her, his grief for his mother, his desperate hope that this wasn't a mistake. And deeper still, she felt his wolf wild and ancient, recognizing her on a level that transcended logic or reason. Mine, it seemed to say. Ours. Protected. Cherished. Kieran released her, his tongue sealing the wound with careful precision. When Mira touched her shoulder, she felt raised skin, a perfect crescent mark, identical to the scar on her throat but fresh and burning. It's done, Sasha said, her voice carrying relief. The bond is sealed. Mira turned to face Kieran, who was already shifting back to human form. His eyes were still silver bright, his breathing ragged. They stared at each other, both adjusting to the new awareness, humming between them. A connection that felt both foreign and absolutely right. I can feel you, Mira whispered. I know. His hand came up, fingers tracing the mark he'd left. It will fade to silver scars, like your other one, but the bond that never fades. A howl split the dawn long, haunting, furious. Marcus appeared in the doorway. They're crossing the boundary. Thorn's pack, they're not waiting. Kieran's expression hardened instantly, the alpha sliding into place. How many? All of them. 30 at least. Marcus's jaw clenched. They know what you did. They can smell the fresh bond. And they're coming anyway. That's insane, Sasha said. Pack law clearly states, rogues don't follow pack law. Kieran cut her off. He looked at Mira, conflict warring in his face. Stay here. The chamber is warded. They can't enter. No. Mira grabbed his arm. You said I'm pack now. I don't hide while pack fights. You don't know how to fight wolves. Then teach me fast, or let me figure it out. Mira's voice was steel. But I'm not cowering in a cave while people die for me. Kieran studied her face, and she felt his emotions through the bond pride mixing with fear, frustration, tangling with respect. She's right, Marcus said quietly. If Thorn sees her hiding, he'll call Kieran's claim weak. But if she stands with us, it proves the bond is real, Sasha finished. That she's truly pack, not just politically protected. Another howl, closer now. The sound of claws on stone echoed through the corridors. Kieran made a decision. He pulled Mira close, his forehead pressing against hers. Stay behind me. Always. If I tell you to run, I won't. If I tell you to run, he repeated firmly. You run. Because if you die, this bond will destroy me. Do you understand? Mira felt the truth of it through their connection. The way her death would shatter him, leave him broken beyond repair. I understand, she said softly. Good. He kissed her then, hard and desperate and claiming. When he pulled back, his eyes were pure wolf. Let's end this. They moved as one toward the chamber entrance, toward the sound of approaching war, toward whatever fate had in store. And for the first time in her life, Mira didn't feel like she was running. She felt like she was fighting for home. The battle never came. When Mira and Kieran emerged into the pre-dawn valley, they found both packs frozen in a standoff. But it wasn't the threat of violence that stopped them, it was the woman standing between the two groups, her hands raised, her body glowing with the same golden light that had pulsed through Mira's palms when she'd healed the pup. The woman was old, her silver hair flowing past her shoulders, her face lined with wisdom and sorrow. She wore robes that shimmered like moonlight on water, and when she turned to look at Mira, her eyes were ancient and knowing. Grandmother, Kieran breathed, and Mira felt his shock ripple through the bond. But you died 5 years ago. My body did, the woman said, her voice carrying across the valley with supernatural clarity. But the Moon Mother granted me one final task before I could rest. Her gaze fixed on Mira, to bear witness to the child of prophecy. Garrett Thorne stood at the head of his rogues, his face twisted with confusion and rage. This changes nothing. The blood debt was paid 30 years ago, the grandmother interrupted, her voice sharp as broken glass. By my daughter. By Kieran's mother. When she gave her life to protect this child. Silence fell like snow. Mira felt the world tilt. What? The old woman moved closer, her spectral form solidifying with each step. Sarah came to us broken and desperate, carrying a child she knew would be hunted, a child born of forbidden love between a blood witch and an alpha from a rival pack, your father, who died defending your mother from Thorne's family when they discovered her pregnancy. Thorne snarled. Lies. My father had a rightful claim. Your father tried to force a bond on a woman who loved another, the grandmother said coldly. When she refused, when she ran with her true mate, your family declared blood war. They hunted Sarah for months, killed her mate, and would have killed the child too if my daughter hadn't intervened. Mira's hand went to the scar on her throat, understanding blooming like pain. She marked me. Kieran's mother marked me. Yes. The grandmother's expression softened. She used her own life force to fuel the concealment seal, knowing it would weaken her fatally. She hid you among humans, gave you the blood hymn so you would always carry her protection. And then, her voice cracked. Then she faced the hunters Sarah had accidentally led to our territory. She died buying time for the pack to defend itself, for you to escape, for the future to unfold as it was meant to. Kieran made a sound raw and wounded. Mira felt his grief crash through the bond, 30 years of anger and loss finally finding its target. Sarah didn't betray us, he said hoarsely. She was trying to save her child. Yes, but in doing so, she brought danger to our doorstep. The grandmother looked at Thorne. Your father's hunters, your family's rage. My daughter paid the price for protecting an innocent life. Then the debt falls to the child, Thorne insisted. But his voice had lost its certainty. No. The grandmother's form blazed brighter. The debt was paid in full by an alpha's willing sacrifice. Blood for blood, life for life. Mira Chen owes you nothing. She turned to address both packs. The prophecy spoke of a child who would bridge two worlds, who would carry both witch and wolf magic, who would end an ancient cycle of vengeance. That child stands before you now marked by an alpha's love, protected by an alpha's bond, and chosen by the Moon Mother herself. The golden light surrounding the grandmother's form began to spread, touching each wolf present. Mira watched as Thorne's rogues shifted, their hostility draining away, replaced by something like awe. The blood debt is dissolved, the grandmother declared. The prophecy is fulfilled. And she looked at Kieran with infinite tenderness. I can finally rest, knowing you found what I always hoped you would. What's that? Kieran's voice was barely audible. Someone worth protecting more than vengeance. Someone who makes you whole. She smiled. Love her well, my grandson. She is your mother's final gift. The light flared brilliant and blinding. When it faded, the grandmother was gone. Thorne stood silent for a long moment, his pack restless behind him. Then, slowly, he lowered his head in a gesture of submission not to Kieran, but to Mira. The debt is paid, he said roughly. We will honor the Moon Mother's judgment. He turned and walked back into the forest, his rogues following. Within moments, they had disappeared like they'd never been there at all. Mira's legs gave out. Kieran caught her, lowering them both to the ground as the sun finally broke over the mountains, painting the valley in shades of gold and rose. It's over, she whispered. It's over, he confirmed, pulling her against his chest. Through the bond, she felt his relief, his grief, his overwhelming love for a mother who had sacrificed everything. Around them, the pack began to disperse, giving them privacy. Sasha paused long enough to squeeze Mira's shoulder, approval and acceptance in her amber eyes. Marcus nodded once, a gesture that spoke of begrudging respect. "Your mother," Mira said quietly. "She saved me, protected me, loved me, even though I wasn't hers. That was who she was." Kieran's voice was thick with emotion. "She saw people's souls. She must have seen yours, and known you were worth dying for. I wish I could remember her. Maybe someday you will. The concealment magic is broken now. Your memories might surface." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "But even if they don't, you carry her gift. The blood hymn, the mark, the ability to heal with light and love." Mira turned in his arms, looking up at his face haloed by sunrise. "And you? I carry you now too." "Yes." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "How does it feel? The bond?" "Like coming home," she said honestly. "Like I've been searching my whole life and finally found what I didn't know I needed." "Good." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. "Because you're stuck with me now. Pack law, mate bond, and pure stubborn determination." Mira laughed, the sound surprising them both. "I can think of worse fates. Such as? Serving coffee to grumpy truckers at 3 a.m. You're never going back to that diner." "No," Mira agreed, looking out at the valley at Shadowpine, at the pack moving through the morning light, at the pup she could see bounding toward them with joyful determination. "I don't think I am." The pup launched itself at Mira, licking her face with enthusiastic affection. She laughed, scratching behind its ears, and felt Kieran's contentment through the bond. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Kieran stood, pulling her up with him, keeping her tucked against his side. "Now we figure out what it means to be a wolf-witch hybrid in a pack that's never seen one. We teach you to shift, if you can. We explore this bond and see where it leads." He paused, his expression turning serious. "And we honor my mother's sacrifice by building something worth her gift. A future where children like you don't have to hide. Where love matters more than bloodlines. Where home is something you choose, not something you're born into." Mira looked at him, this alpha who had every reason to hate her, who had instead chosen to protect her, claim her, love her. "I choose here," she said softly. "I choose you. I choose Pack." "Then welcome home, Mira Chen." Kieran's smile was sunlight breaking through clouds. "Welcome to Shadowpine. Welcome to Northern Territory. Welcome to wherever this impossible, beautiful bond takes us." As they walked back toward the compound, the pup dancing at their heels, Mira began to hum. The blood hymn rose naturally, no longer mysterious or frightening, but simply hers, a gift from a woman she'd never known, carried forward into a future built on sacrifice and hope. And for the first time since she could remember, Mira wasn't running from her past. She was walking toward her future, together.